They thought she was just a nobody, a broke waitress in a stained apron, invisible to the world. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't know who she belonged to. When billionaire magnate Silas Vane saw the bruise on her cheek, the temperature in the room dropped to 0. He didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't call the police. He simply touched her face and whispered 5 words that started a war. "Who did this to you?" By sunrise, the Chicago underworld would be burning, and everyone who touched her would wish they were dead. This is the story of how love turned a city into a graveyard. The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grit slicker. At 1 a.m., the neon sign of the Emerald Lounge flickered with a dying buzz, casting a sickly green light onto the wet pavement of West Randolph Street. Inside, the air smelled of stale cigars, expensive cognac, and desperation. Serafina, Sarah Cross, wiped down the mahogany bar for the 100th time that night. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it, locking her elbows against her ribs, but the tremor was bone deep. Every time the heavy oak door creaked open, she flinched, her eyes darting to the entrance like a trapped animal. "Sarah, table 4 needs a refill on the Macallan. Move it." The manager, a greasy man named Rick who wore shirts 2 sizes too small, barked from the shadows. "Coming, Rick," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse. She adjusted the collar of her uniform, pulling it higher. It was a futile gesture. The dark purple bruise blooming across her collarbone was hidden, but the split in her lower lip was harder to conceal. She had dabbed concealer on it in the bathroom 3 times, but the swelling was stubborn. Sarah picked up the bottle of Macallan 25. This bottle cost more than her rent for 3 months. She navigated the crowded floor, keeping her head down. The Emerald Lounge wasn't a dive bar. It was a sanctuary for the city's elite predators. Senators drank with union leaders here. Tech CEOs made illegal deals in the booths. And then there were men like the ones at table 4. She approached the booth in the back corner. It was occupied by 3 men. 2 were loud, wearing flashy watches and laughing at a joke that wasn't funny. The 3rd man sat in silence. Silas Vane. Even in a room full of powerful men, Silas was a gravity well. He didn't just occupy space, he owned it. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit him like armor, cut from Italian wool that probably cost $50,000. He was leaning back, one hand swirling a glass of sparkling water, his dark eyes scanning the room with a predatory boredom. He was the CEO of Vane Heavy Industries on paper. In reality, the FBI had a file on him thicker than a Bible, linking him to the shipping docks, the unions, and the cleaning of messy problems for the city's oligarchy. He was the uncrowned king of Chicago. Sarah's heart hammered against her bruised ribs. She just had to pour the drink and leave. Don't look at him. Don't let him see. Refill. The man on the left grunted. This was Marco, a mid-level enforcer with more ambition than brains. He grabbed Sarah's wrist as she poured. "Hey, look who it is. The ghost." "You're shaking, sweetheart. You cold?" The liquor splashed slightly over the rim. "I'm sorry," Sarah stammered, trying to pull her wrist back. Marco's grip tightened. "Let go of her, Marco," Silas said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low baritone that cut through the noise of the club like a razor blade. He didn't even look up from his water. Marco laughed nervously. "Releasing her. Just having fun, boss. She's jumpy tonight." Sarah quickly topped off the glasses, her breath hitching. As she turned to flee back to the safety of the bar, she felt a gaze burning into her back. She risked a glance. Silas Vane was looking at her. Not at her body, not with the leering hunger most men here had. He was looking at her face, specifically at her lip. His eyes narrowed by a fraction of a millimeter. Sarah bolted. She retreated to the staff break room, leaning against the cold industrial sink, hyperventilating. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from him. A text message that read, "I know where you work. I'm waiting outside." Panic. cold and sharp, flooded her veins. She couldn't leave. Not yet. "Sarah!" Rick kicked the door open. "Vane wants to see you. Now." Sarah froze. "What? Why?" "I don't know. Maybe you spilled on him." "If you cost me this client, you're not just fired, you're dead in this town. Go." Walking back to table 4 felt like walking to the gallows. The music seemed to fade away. The other patrons blurred into the background. There was only Silas Vane, sitting alone now. Marco and the other man were gone. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Sit!" It wasn't a request. Sarah sat, perched on the edge of the velvet leather. "Mr. Vane, I'm so sorry if the service was—" "Stop." He placed his glass down. He leaned forward, the shadows retreating from his face. He was devastatingly handsome, with a sharp jawline and eyes the color of obsidian, but there was a violence in him that made the air heavy. "Look at me." She forced herself to meet his gaze. He reached across the table. His hand was large, his fingers long and elegant. He didn't grab her. He gently, almost reverently, tilted her chin up. His thumb brushed over the swollen cut on her lip. Sarah flinched, expecting pain. Instead, his touch was warm. "Who?" he asked. "I fell." She lied. The standard lie. The lie she had told the doctors, her landlord, and herself. "I tripped on the stairs in my apartment building. The railing is loose." Silas stared at her. He didn't blink. He was reading her, dissecting the micro-expressions of fear in her eyes. "You didn't fall, Serafina. That is a split caused by a ring or a knuckle. And judging by the way you're guarding your left side, your ribs are bruised too." "Please," she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "Please don't. I just want to do my job." "You think you're invisible," Silas said softly. "You think because you wear that apron and keep your head down, no one sees you. I see you. I've watched you for 6 months. I know you take your coffee black. I know you read French literature on your break. And I know that yesterday you didn't have that bruise." Sarah felt exposed, naked. He had been watching her? "It's nothing," she insisted, pulling back. "It's personal." Silas's face hardened. The indifference vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying rage. He stood up. The movement was so abrupt that the nearby tables went silent. He buttoned his jacket. "Shift is over," Silas announced. "What?" "Get your coat. You're leaving." "I can't," she said, thinking of the text message. "I'm waiting outside." "I really can't go out there right now." Silas walked around the table. He offered her his hand. "You aren't walking out alone. You're walking out with me. And if anyone is waiting for you, God help them." The exit of the Emerald Lounge opened into a narrow alleyway connecting to Halstead Street. It was usually where the kitchen staff smoked, but tonight, the rain had driven everyone inside. Sarah walked beside Silas, dwarfed by his presence. He had draped his suit jacket over her shoulders. It smelled of expensive sandalwood and gun oil. It was heavy, a physical weight of protection she wasn't used to. "Where is your car?" Silas asked as they stepped into the drizzle. "I take the bus," Sarah murmured, clutching the lapels of his jacket. "Not anymore." He guided her toward a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom, idling at the curb. A driver, a giant of a man with a shaved head, stepped out to open the door. But before they could reach the car, a shadow detached itself from the brick wall across the street. "Sarah!" The voice made her blood turn to ice. It was Todd. Todd wasn't a Mafia boss. He wasn't a mastermind. He was just a mean, drunk stockbroker who had lost his job and decided that Sarah was the reason for all his failures. He stumbled into the light, wearing a soaked windbreaker, his face twisted in a snarl. "I told you I was waiting!" Todd shouted, ignoring the massive car and the men in suits. "You think you can ignore my texts? You think you're better than me?" Sarah shrank back, bumping into Silas's chest. "Todd, please, just go home." "I'm not going anywhere until you give me the money you owe me." Todd lunged forward. Silas didn't move. He didn't even take his hands out of his pockets. He simply shifted his weight. "Is this him?" Sarah didn't answer. She didn't have to. Todd stopped a few feet away, finally noticing Silas. He sneered. "Who's this? Your new sugar daddy? You sleeping with this guy to pay rent now?" The air around them seemed to vibrate. Silas looked at Todd with the kind of curiosity a scientist has for a bug he is about to dissect. "Todd, is it?" Silas asked. "Yeah. Who the hell are you?" "I'm the man who is going to give you a choice," Silas said calmly. "You can turn around, walk away, and leave Chicago tonight. Or you can finish that sentence." Todd laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "You think you scare me?" "I know guys at the precinct I can have you arrested for." Todd reached out to grab Sarah's arm again. The violence happened so fast that Sarah missed the beginning of it. One moment Todd was reaching. The next, there was a sickening crack. Silas had moved with blurred speed. He had intercepted Todd's hand, twisted the wrist, and kicked the back of Todd's knee. Todd was on the ground in the puddles, screaming, clutching a wrist that was bent at an unnatural angle. "My hand! You broke my hand!" Silas stepped forward. He placed one polished Oxford shoe on Todd's chest, pinning him to the wet asphalt. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more threat than a scream. "You touched her," Silas said, "with this hand." "You're crazy!" Todd shrieked. Silas looked up at his driver. "Huxley, put him in the trunk!" Sarah gasped. "Silas, no! You can't kill him!" Silas looked at her. The rage in his eyes softened just a fraction when he saw her terror. "I'm not going to kill him, Serafina. Death is too easy. I'm going to make sure he understands the hierarchy of the food chain." "Please," she begged, grabbing his arm. "If you do this, the police—" "I own the police," Silas said simply. "But for your sake, I won't put him in the trunk." He looked back down at Todd, who was sobbing now. "Listen to me closely. If I ever see your face in this city again, if I ever hear you say her name, if you ever even think about her, I will find you. And next time, I won't just break your wrist. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes, I understand," Todd wailed. Silas lifted his foot. "Run!" Todd scrambled up, cradling his broken arm, and sprinted into the darkness, slipping on the wet pavement in his haste to escape the devil in the Dior suit. Silas watched him go, then turned back to Sarah. He checked her face again, his thumb brushing a stray tear from her cheek. "He's gone," Silas said. "He won't come back." "You don't know him," Sarah shook her head. "He's relentless. He's a bully. And bullies crumble when they meet a predator," Silas said. "Get in the car, Serafina. You aren't going back to your apartment tonight." "Where am I going?" "To my estate, where no one can touch you." Sarah hesitated. She knew the reputation of Silas Vane. Going with him was dangerous. It was like stepping into the lion's den to escape a wolf. But as she looked at the dark alley where Todd had disappeared, she realized she had no choice. She slid into the leather interior of the Rolls-Royce. The door closed with a heavy thud, sealing out the rain and the noise. Silas sat next to her. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "It's Vane," he said into the phone. "I need a name run. Todd Miller. Find out everything. Where he lives, who he owes money to, where his mother lives. I want his life dismantled by morning." He paused, listening. "And get the doctor to the penthouse. I have a guest who needs medical attention." He hung up and looked at Sarah. "I asked you a question inside, and you didn't answer fully." "I told you I fell," she whispered, though the lie felt thin now. "No," Silas said. "That man, Todd. He's just a symptom. He's weak. He didn't give you the bruising on your ribs. He's too cowardly to hit you where it shows, unless he loses control. Someone else hurt you. Someone powerful enough to make you afraid to speak." Sarah looked away, staring out the tinted window as the city lights blurred by. "Who are you protecting, Serafina?" She stayed silent. She couldn't tell him. If she told him who really held the leash, who Todd was actually working for, Silas would start a war that would burn Chicago to the ground. Todd was just the ex-boyfriend. But the man who sent Todd to collect the debt? That was a name even Silas Vane should fear. Or so she thought. Silas sighed. He reached into the minibar and poured a glass of water, handing it to her. "Rest," he said. "We have a long night ahead." because by dawn I'm going to find out who made you afraid. And every man involved is going to wish he had never been born. The Vane estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress in the sky. The Rolls-Royce pulled into a private underground garage beneath one of the most exclusive skyscrapers on East Wacker Drive. The concrete walls were thick, muffling the sounds of the city above. Silas guided Sarah out of the car. Her legs felt like jelly. The adrenaline from the alleyway was fading, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion and the sharp sting of her bruised ribs. They took a private elevator that bypassed the lobby, shooting straight to the penthouse. The doors slid open to reveal a sprawling living space that looked more like a museum than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Chicago River and the stormy lake beyond. The floors were Italian marble, cold and pristine. "Huxley, stay at the door. No one comes in unless I authorize it," Silas commanded. "Understood, sir." Silas led Sarah to a massive white sofa near the fireplace. "Sit. The doctor is already on his way up." "I don't have insurance for a house call like this," Sarah murmured, looking around nervously. The vase on the coffee table probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. Silas poured a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Money is not a conversation you and I will ever have. Drink this, it's brandy. It will help with the shock." She took the glass, her fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. He watched her sip, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Take off the coat," he said gently. She hesitated. Underneath the oversized suit jacket, her uniform was torn at the shoulder, revealing the strap of her bra and the ugly purple mottling of her skin. "Sarah, I need to see the damage." Slowly, she let the jacket slide off her shoulders. Silas inhaled sharply. The bruise on her collarbone was worse than he had thought. It was a deep, angry violet, the shape of a heavy grip. "Todd did that?" Silas asked, his voice deceptively calm. "No," she whispered. "Todd is just the messenger. He grabs me when he's desperate, but he didn't do this." Before Silas could press further, the elevator chimed. A balding man with a leather medical bag stepped out. Dr. Evans. He was one of the best trauma surgeons in the state, and he was on Silas Vane's private retainer. "Mr. Vane." The doctor nodded, sensing the tension in the room immediately. "Check her ribs, Doc. And her face. If she needs an X-ray, bring the machine here. She isn't going to a hospital." The examination was clinical and swift. Sarah sat frozen as Dr. Evans prodded her side. She hissed in pain when he touched the floating ribs on her left side. "Hairline fracture," Dr. Evans concluded, pulling a stethoscope from his ears. "Painful, but it will heal. The lip needs 2 stitches. The bruising, well, that will take time." He cleaned the cut on her lip with stinging antiseptic. Silas stood by the window, his back to them, watching the rain lash against the glass. He seemed to be vibrating with suppressed energy. Once the doctor had finished and left, prescribing painkillers and rest, the silence in the penthouse became heavy. Silas walked back to the sofa. He sat on the coffee table in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. He took her hands in his. "The doctor is gone. The staff is gone. It's just us." Silas's grip tightened slightly. "Now, you are going to tell me the truth. You said Todd was just a messenger. Who sent him?" Sarah looked down at their joined hands. "If I tell you, they will kill you. You don't understand, Silas. These aren't just street thugs." Silas let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Serafina, look around you. Do I look like a man who worries about street thugs?" "It's Lorenzo Moretti," she whispered. The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Silas didn't flinch. He didn't gasp. He simply went very, very still. Lorenzo Moretti. The head of the Moretti crime family. The old guard. They controlled the unions, the meatpacking district, and half the judges in Cook County. They were violent, traditional, and untouchable. "Todd owes Moretti money?" Silas asked. $500,000. Sarah confessed, the tears finally spilling over. "Todd, he had a gambling problem. He borrowed from Moretti's loan sharks to cover his losses on the stock market. When he couldn't pay, he told them he had a girlfriend. He told them I would pay. And you agreed to this? I didn't have a choice, she sobbed. They came to my sister's school, Silas. They sent me photos of her walking into class. Moretti told me that every week I didn't pay the interest, they would take a piece of my life. First my job, then my apartment, then my family. She pulled down the collar of her shirt to reveal an old, faded cigarette burn on her shoulder. Moretti did this himself to show me he was serious. Silas stared at the burn mark, his eyes turned black. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood up slowly. He walked over to the wet bar, picked up the crystal glass he had been drinking from, and hurled it against the fireplace. Smash! The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering diamonds. Sarah jumped, terrified. He touched you, Silas said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization of horror. Lorenzo Moretti put his hands on you. Silas, please. He threatened your sister, he extorted you, and he burned you. Silas turned to face her. The calm businessman was gone. In his place was the warlord of Chicago. You are staying here. You will sleep in the master suite. You will have guards at the door. Where are you going? She asked, seeing him button his jacket. I have work to do. You can't go after Moretti, she cried, standing up despite the pain in her ribs. He has an army. Silas walked over to her. He framed her face with his hands, careful not to touch the bruises. He kissed her forehead. It was a chaste kiss, but it burned with a possessive intensity that made her knees weak. Moretti has an army. Silas whispered against her skin. But I have the devil on my payroll. Go to sleep, Serafina. When you wake up, the world will be different. Silas didn't go to the police station. He didn't go to the Moretti compound. He went to the basement of the Vane Industries Tower, 3 floors below the parking garage. This was the war room. It was a soundproof bunker with walls lined with screens displaying live surveillance feeds of the city. In the center was a large mahogany table. Sitting around it were 4 men and 1 woman. They were Silas's inner circle, his board of directors for the illegal side of his empire. There was Dominic, his right-hand man and head of security. Elias, a hacker who could shut down the city's power grid in 10 minutes. Marcus, an ex-Mossad agent who handled acquisitions, kidnappings. And Sophia, a cold-eyed woman who managed the money laundering through a chain of luxury art galleries. They all stood up when Silas entered. They knew that look on his face. They hadn't seen it in 5 years. Not since the night Silas took over the company by eliminating his own corrupt father. Sit, Silas commanded. He threw a file folder onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped in front of Dominic. Lorenzo Moretti, Silas said. Dominic raised an eyebrow. The old man? We have a truce with the Moretti's, boss. We stay out of the meatpacking district. They stay out of the tech sector. If we break that... The truce is over, Silas interrupted. As of 10 minutes ago, the Moretti family is classified as a hostile entity. The room went silent. Breaking a truce with the Morettis meant urban warfare. It meant car bombs and drive-by shootings. May I ask why? Sophia asked carefully. Is it business? It's personal, Silas said, leaning his hands on the table. Moretti hurt someone who belongs to me. He didn't explain who. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes told them that questioning him would be a fatal error. What are the orders? Dominic asked, opening a laptop. I want him dismantled, Silas said, his voice cold and precise. I don't want him dead yet. Death is too quick. I want him to watch his empire crumble first. I want him to feel the fear he inflicted on others. Silas pointed to the screens. Elias, freeze their accounts. Every offshore shell company, every Cayman Island account. I want Moretti to wake up tomorrow unable to buy a cup of coffee. Done, Elias typed furiously. I'll trigger an SEC audit on his front businesses, too. Sophia, Silas continued, call in the loans. The Morettis are over-leveraged in real estate. Buy the debt. Foreclose on their warehouses by noon. I can have the eviction notices ready in an hour, she smirked. Marcus, Silas turned to the ex-agent. Moretti has a shipment of firearms coming in tonight at the South Docks, container 44B. I don't want that shipment to arrive. You want me to steal it? Marcus asked. No, Silas said. I want you to burn it. Burn it all. Make a bonfire so big they can see it from the penthouse. Dominic cleared his throat. Boss, if we do this, Moretti will retaliate. He'll come for you. I'm counting on it, Silas said. He walked over to the map of Chicago on the wall. He traced a line from the Moretti territory to his own. He thinks he's the predator. He thinks because he's been running this city for 30 years, he's safe. He forgot what it's like to be hunted. Silas pulled a gun from his holster, a custom 1911 with an ivory grip, and placed it on the table. He touched her, Silas said softly to the room, the vulnerability slipping through for just a second before the rage took over again. He put a cigarette out on her skin. The team went stiff. They understood now. This wasn't business. This was vengeance. Dominic, Silas said, send a team to Sarah's sister's university. Use the invisible detail. If anyone looks at her wrong, I want them gone. And send a message to Todd Miller. The boyfriend? The ex-boyfriend. Find him. Don't hurt him yet. Just bring him here. I need him to deliver a message to Moretti. Silas turned back to the screens. Get to work. I want the Moretti Empire burning by sunrise. The sun was just beginning to crest over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. In the penthouse, Sarah woke up with a start. The painkillers had knocked her out, but the nightmare had pulled her back. She sat up in the massive bed, confused by the silk sheets and the silence. She limped to the window. Far to the south, near the industrial docks, a massive plume of black smoke was rising into the sky. It was huge, billowing up like a dark omen. The door to the bedroom opened. Silas walked in. He was still wearing his suit from the night before, but he had removed his tie and unbuttoned his collar. He looked tired, but victorious. He was holding a tray with coffee and a croissant. "Good morning," he said. Sarah pointed at the window. "Silas, what is that smoke?" Silas set the tray down on the bedside table. He walked over to her and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, careful of her ribs. He rested his chin on her shoulder, looking out at the burning horizon. "That," Silas whispered, "is my answer to your question." "What question?" "You asked who did this to you," Silas said darkly, "and now I'm asking them, who is going to save you now?" Sierra trembled. She realized then that she hadn't just met a billionaire. She had unleashed a monster. But as he held her tight, shielding her from the view of the burning city, she realized something else. For the first time in her life, the monster was on her side. "Moretti knows," Silas said. "By now he knows it was me. The war has started, Serafina." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good." Silas turned her around to face him. "Fear keeps you alive. But you don't need to fear me, and you don't need to fear them anymore, because from this moment on, you are under the protection of the Vane family. And if Moretti wants to get to you, he'll have to climb over a mountain of bodies to do it." His phone buzzed. Silas glanced at it. "It's begun," he said. "Get dressed. We have a visitor." "Who?" "Todd." Silas's eyes glinted. "My men found him trying to board a bus to Detroit. I think it's time he paid his debts." "But not with money." The library of the Vane penthouse was a room of dark oak and darker secrets. Silas sat in a leather wingback chair, watching Todd Miller weep. Todd was on his knees in the center of the Persian rug. He wasn't tied up. He didn't need to be. Dominic stood behind him, arms crossed, looking like a bored executioner. Todd's clothes were muddy from his failed attempt to flee through the rail yards, and his broken wrist was cradled against his chest, throbbing and swollen. Sarah stood by the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. Seeing Todd like this, pathetic, sniveling, broken, didn't bring her the satisfaction she thought it would. It just made her realize how small he was, and how terrifying Silas was. "Please," Todd slobbered, snot running down his nose. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Silas. Mr. Vane, I didn't know she was with you." Silas swirled the espresso in his cup. He looked at Todd with pure disgust. "She wasn't with me. That's the problem, Todd. You thought she was alone. You thought because she had no one you could sell her to a butcher like Lorenzo Moretti to cover your own incompetence." "It was just money," Todd pleaded. "I was going to pay it back." You sold her safety for 40 grand, Silas said, checking the file on the table. That's the price you put on her. $40,000. Silas stood up. Todd flinched, curling into a ball. Get up, Silas commanded. Todd scrambled to his feet, shaking. I'm not going to kill you, Silas said, walking over to fix Todd's collar. He smoothed the muddy fabric with a terrifying gentleness. Because dead men can't deliver messages, and I need you to be a very loud messenger. A message? Silas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet jewelry box. He opened it. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a bullet. A .45 caliber round, engraved with the Vane family crest. A wolf's head. He tucked the bullet into Todd's shirt pocket. Go to Moretti, Silas whispered. Walk right into his social club on Taylor Street. Put this on his table. And tell him that Silas Vane is coming to collect the interest. He'll kill me, Todd whispered, his eyes wide. If you stay here, I will kill you, Silas said, his voice dropping to that subterranean rumble. And I promise you, my way is slower. Now run. Dominic opened the door. Todd didn't hesitate. He bolted, running out of the penthouse as if the hounds of hell were snapping at his heels. Silas turned to Sarah. The mask of the cold mob boss slipped for a second, revealing the man beneath, tired, wired, and fiercely protective. Is it done? Sarah asked softly. No. Silas walked over to her. He ran his hand down her arm, stopping at her hand. He interlaced their fingers. Moretti won't be scared by a bullet. He's an old wolf. He'll bite back. We need to move you. Move me? To where? A safe house in the Highlands. The penthouse is secure, but it's a glass cage. If they bring a rocket launcher or a sniper to the neighboring roof, we're exposed. I'm taking you out of the city until the smoke clears. What about my sister? Sarah asked, panic flaring. Lily is at the university. If Moretti knows about me, he knows about her. My team is already there, Silas assured her. They're extracting her now. We're meeting them at the safe house. 10 minutes later, they were in the elevator, descending to the garage. But this time, they didn't take the Rolls-Royce. They moved toward a heavy armored SUV, a Mercedes G-Wagon plated with military-grade steel. Silas ushered her into the back seat. He got in beside her. Dominic took the wheel. Another guard, a quiet man named Gregor, took the passenger seat with an assault rifle across his lap. Stay low, Silas said as the engine roared to life. And don't look out the windows. The car surged out of the underground garage, merging into the morning traffic of downtown Chicago. The city looked normal. People were walking to work, drinking coffee, checking phones. They had no idea that a war had just been declared in their streets. They turned onto Lower Wacker Drive. For those who don't know Chicago, Lower Wacker is a subterranean highway system beneath the city, a maze of concrete pillars, dim yellow lights, and shadows. It's where GPS signals die and where the city hides its grit. Traffic is thinning, Dominic muttered, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. We have a tail, black sedan. No plates. Silas didn't panic. He reached under the seat and pulled out a Kevlar vest. Sarah, put this on, now. Silas, put it on. As she fumbled with the straps, the world exploded. A heavy SUV rammed them from the side, screeching out from behind a concrete pillar. The armored Mercedes shuddered violently, metal screeching against metal. Sarah screamed as she was thrown against the door, the vest absorbing the impact. Hold on! Dominic yelled, wrestling the steering wheel. Gunfire erupted. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Bullets sparked against the armored glass of the Mercedes. The sound was deafening, like hail on a tin roof, but amplified 1,000 times. They boxed us in, Gregor shouted, rolling down his window just an inch to return fire. The smell of cordite and burnt rubber filled the cabin. Silas pushed Sarah's head down into his lap, covering her body with his own. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking out the window, his face a mask of calculated fury. He drew his gun. Ram them, Silas ordered. Boss, there's a pillar! I said ram them! Dominic slammed on the brakes and spun the wheel. The heavy G-Wagon drifted, its reinforced bumper smashing into the front of the attacking sedan. There was a sickening crunch of metal. The sedan spun out, crashing into the concrete wall of the tunnel. But two more cars appeared, blocking the road ahead. Men in ski masks spilled out, armed with automatic weapons. "Get down," Silas growled. He kicked his door open. "Silas, no!" Sarah screamed, grabbing his jacket. "Stay here. Lock the door." Silas rolled out of the moving car. He moved with the grace of a panther, using the vehicle as cover. He raised his custom 1911 and fired. 3 shots. 3 men dropped. He didn't waste bullets. He was a surgeon with a trigger. It was chaos. The echoes of the gunshots bounced off the tunnel walls, creating a cacophony of violence. Dominic was firing from the driver's side. Silas advanced, not retreating. He walked toward the attackers, firing methodically. He was a force of nature. He was proving exactly why the city feared him. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a killer who had built his throne on violence. The remaining attackers, realizing they were outmatched by a man who seemed to have no fear of death, scrambled back into their car and peeled away, tires smoking. Silas stood in the middle of the road, surrounded by shell casings and the ruin of the crash. He didn't chase them. He turned back to the Mercedes. He ripped the door open. Sarah was huddled on the floor, shaking. "Are you hit?" he demanded, scanning her frantically. "Sarah, look at me. Are you hit?" "I don't think so," she stammered. Silas pulled her out of the car, crushing her against his chest. His heart was hammering against her ear like a trapped bird. For a moment he buried his face in her neck, breathing in her scent, verifying she was alive. "They tried to take you," he whispered into her hair. His voice was trembling with rage. "They didn't shoot to kill. They shot the tires. They wanted to box us in and drag you out." He pulled back, his hands gripping her shoulders. His eyes were wild. Moretti just made the last mistake of his life. The safe house was compromised. They couldn't go there. Instead, Dominic drove the battered, bullet-riddled SUV to an old textile factory in the West Loop, one of Silas's off-the-books properties. It was a loft-style space, raw and industrial, filled with dust and old machinery. Dominic and Gregor stood guard at the heavy steel doors. Silas paced the floor. He had taken off his ruined suit jacket. His white shirt was stained with grease and a smear of blood. Not his own. He was on the phone, barking orders to his team. Sarah sat on a wooden crate, still wearing the heavy Kevlar vest. She felt numb. The reality of her life had shattered. Yesterday she was a waitress worried about rent. Today she was the center of a Mafia war. "Where is she?" Silas shouted into the phone. "You said you had eyes on her." He paused, listening. His face went pale, a color she had never seen on him. Sarah stood up. "Silas, what is it?" Silas slowly lowered the phone. He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes broke her heart. "The university," he said, his voice hollow. "My team got there too late. Her dorm room was empty." Sarah felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. "Lily?" "There was a note," Silas said, pinned to her pillow. Sarah rushed forward, grabbing his shirt. "What did it say? Silas, tell me." "It was an address," Silas said, "and a time. Midnight. Tonight." "He has her," Sarah whispered, the tears coming hot and fast. "Moretti has my sister. He took her to get to me. To get to you," Silas said. He punched the brick wall next to him, his knuckles splitting. "I should have moved faster. I should have burned his house down while he slept." "We have to give him what he wants," Sarah said, wiping her face. The fear was evaporating, replaced by a cold resolve. "He wants the money Todd owed? I'll sign whatever debt he wants. He wants me? I'll go." "No," Silas grabbed her arms. "You are not going anywhere near Lorenzo Moretti. Do you know what men like that do to women? If you walk into his hands, you never walk out." "Then what do we do? We can't let him hurt Lily. She's innocent, Silas." "She doesn't even know who Moretti is." "I know," Silas said deeply. "That's why I'm going." "You?" The meeting is at the old Union stockyards. The killing floor. It's where Moretti likes to do business. He wants a trade. He doesn't care about the money anymore, sirrah. I embarrassed him. I burned his shipment. I beat his men. He wants blood. He wants my blood. He'll kill you, she said, her voice trembling. He'll try, Silas corrected. He walked over to a metal cabinet in the corner of the room. He unlocked it. Inside was an arsenal. Assault rifles, night vision goggles, grenades. He began to equip himself. He strapped a holster to his leg. He checked the magazine of a Sig Sauer P226. He looked less like a CEO and more like a soldier preparing for a suicide mission. I'm going alone, Silas told Dominic. Boss, that's suicide, Dominic argued. The stockyards are a maze. He'll have 50 men in the rafters. If I bring a team, he kills the girl, Silas said. He was very specific. Come alone, or I send her back in pieces. Silas walked back to Sarah. He looked fully armed, dangerous, and beautiful in a terrifying way. I promised you I would protect you, he said. That includes your family. Let me go with you, she begged. If I'm there, maybe he'll hesitate. Maybe I can distract him. No. Silas, she's my sister. And you are my... He stopped. He looked at her, searching her face. You are mine. And I do not gamble with the things that make my life worth living. He kissed her. This time, it wasn't chaste. It was desperate, hard, and tasted of goodbye. He kissed her like he was trying to memorize the shape of her mouth, the taste of her breath. When he pulled away, his eyes were wet. Dominic, Silas said, not looking away from Sarah. If I am not back by 2 a.m., you get her out of the city. New identity. Zurich. You make sure she never looks over her shoulder again. Yes, sir, Dominic said solemnly. Silas, don't do this, Sarah sobbed, clinging to his arm. He gently pried her fingers off. Who did this to you? He whispered, repeating the words from the night they met. Lorenzo Moretti did, and tonight he answers for it. Silas turned and walked out the heavy steel door. It slammed shut with a finality that echoed in Sarah's bones. She stood there for a moment, the silence of the warehouse suffocating her. She looked at Dominic, who was checking his watch, looking grim. Sarah wiped her tears. She looked at the metal cabinet Silas had left open. There was a small pistol on the bottom shelf. A Glock, 26. She thought of Lily, terrified, in some dark room. She thought of Silas, walking into a trap to save a girl he didn't know, all because he loved her sister. Love. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He loved her, and he was going to die for her. Sarah looked at Dominic. Dominic, she said, her voice steady. Yeah, kid. Silas said to get me out of the city if he doesn't come back. That's the order. Well, Sarah walked over to the cabinet and picked up the Glock. It was heavy in her hand. She checked the chamber the way her father, a cop who died too young, had taught her years ago. He's not dead yet, and I'm not leaving him alone. Dominic looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes. It was the same fire Silas had. He sighed, shaking his head. A slow grin spread across his face. You know he's going to fire me for this, Dominic said, reaching for his own rifle. But screw it, I never liked the Swiss Alps anyway. Let's go, Sarah said. The Union stockyards were a cathedral of rust and rotting wood, looming in the darkness like a tomb. Inside, the main killing floor smelled of wet dust and old iron. In the center, illuminated by a harsh construction light, sat Lily, terrified and bound to a chair. Lorenzo Moretti stood behind her, a revolver pressed against her temple. He was surrounded by 12 armed men, their weapons trained on the solitary figure walking toward them. Silas Vane stopped 20 feet away, his hands raised. He was unarmed, just as instructed. You're late, Silas, Moretti rasped, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. Traffic. Silas deadpanned, his eyes locked on Lily to keep her calm. Let her go, Lorenzo. I'm here. That was the deal. The deal changed, Moretti sneered. You embarrassed me. You burned my shipment and froze my accounts. Killing you isn't enough. I want to break you. I want you to watch the girl die first, then your waitress." Silas didn't flinch. "If you pull that trigger, you won't leave this building alive." "I have an army," Moretti shouted. "You are nothing but a dead man walking." "He's not alone." The voice rang out from the darkness of the upper catwalks. Before Moretti could look up, a single gunshot cracked through the air, dropping one of his men. "Dominic, now!" Silas yelled, dropping to the floor. From the shadows, Dominic opened fire with an assault rifle, creating a wall of noise and suppression. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Silas didn't stay down. He rolled forward, grabbing a metal pipe and engaging the nearest gunman. He fought with the brutality of a desperate animal, disarming the man and using the weapon to clear a path toward Lily. Realizing his ambush was failing, Moretti panicked. He dragged Lily's chair backward, using her as a human shield, his gun trembling against her head. "Stop, or I blow her brains out!" Moretti shrieked. The shooting ceased instantly. The silence was suffocating. Silas froze, chest heaving, blood dripping from a graze on his cheek. He stood 10 feet away, helpless. "Get on your knees," Moretti commanded, his eyes wild with fear and adrenaline. "I want to see the great Silas Vane beg." Silas sank to his knees. He looked up, his eyes burning with hatred. But he wasn't looking at Moretti. He was looking past him, to the shadows above. "Say goodbye, Silas." Moretti cocked the hammer. High on the catwalk, Sarah steadied her breathing. She held the Glock 26 with a shaking two-handed grip. She had a clear line of sight to the man who had threatened her sister, the man who had burned her skin. She thought of Silas, on his knees, ready to die for her. "Who did this to you?" "You did," she whispered. Sarah squeezed the trigger. Bang! The shot hit Moretti in the shoulder, shattering the bone. He screamed, spinning around as the revolver skittered across the concrete. Silas lunged. He tackled the falling dawn, raining blows down on his face until the old man was unconscious and ruined. Dominic rushed in, cutting Lily's bonds. Silas stood up, panting, and looked toward the catwalks. "Sarah!" She ran down the rusted stairs and collided with him. Silas lifted her off her feet, burying his face in her neck, holding her tight enough to bruise. "You foolish, stubborn woman," he groaned. "I told you to leave." "I don't take orders very well," she sobbed, clutching him. "I couldn't let you die." Silas pulled back, looking at her with pure awe. He took the gun from her hand and kissed her, a kiss of survival and blood. "Boss, sirens," Dominic warned. "What about him?" He pointed to Moretti. Silas looked at the broken kingpin. "Leave him for the police. His empire is gone, and he was beaten by a waitress. Let him rot in a cell. It's a worse fate than death." Silas draped his torn jacket over Lily's shoulders. He wrapped his arm around Sarah, pulling her into his side. "Let's go home." 3 months later, the charity gala at the Chicago Art Institute was the event of the season. When the doors opened, the room went silent. Silas Vane entered, impeccable in a tuxedo. On his arm was Seraphina Cross. She was no longer invisible. She wore a midnight blue gown that revealed the faint scar on her shoulder, a mark of survival she refused to hide. She walked with her head high, regal and dangerous. They stepped onto the balcony, overlooking the glittering skyline. The Vane family had crushed the syndicate, and the city knew exactly who stood beside the king. "Are you happy?" Silas asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Sarah looked at their reflection in the glass. She saw a woman who was safe, a woman who was feared. She turned, tracing the jawline of the monster who had saved her. "I'm not just happy, Silas," she smiled. "I'm home." Silas kissed her as the wind whipped around them, the city below bowing in reverence to its new queen. And that is the story of Seraphina and Silas. From a bruised waitress to the queen of the Chicago underworld, it's a reminder that sometimes the only person who can heal your scars is the one willing to burn the world down to protect you. I hope you felt every twist of this story. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button. It helps the channel so much. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. I have an even crazier story coming next week about a billionaire who falls for his bodyguard. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Sarah made the right choice sparing Moretti's life? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.